So, good morning and welcome to Unity of Charlotte. Let's hear an applause for this morning. And it's a wonderful morning to welcome everybody because it's special in so many ways. So I want to say thank you for being with us, those of you that are in the sanctuary and those of you on YouTube. The energy is beautiful this morning. How do I know this? Well, because I'm here with you. And the other is on my drive, I always judge the energy on the roads. And this morning, it was especially busy, but especially thoughtful. There were only thoughtful drivers on the road, and they were all smiling as best as I could see. The energy is fine in Charlotte, and here it is especially fine in the sanctuary, and especially fine because of those of you joining us on YouTube, on Zoom. We want to say to you, do join us in the sanctuary. You will find that it will be well worth your efforts to get out of your jammies and put on something comfortable and casual and be with us in the sanctuary. That's just an open and loving invitation to you. Again, we are all present and happy to be here, and therefore join with me in our prayer of oneness. There is one presence and one power in my life and the universe, God, the good, omnipotent. And so in gratitude for this beautiful morning, we will have our opening prayer, the daily word with Brenda Duffy. Thank you, Brenda, for all you do for us.
This is the daily word that is printed by Unity, the organization of Unity churches. And today's daily word has to do with fathers. I bless all fathers with thoughts of gratitude. I'm grateful for fathers, grandfathers, stepfathers, and all father figures who care for children and families. I pray they are called always to follow their guidance and to act to express divine love. I envision their hearts and minds opening to receive blessings of strength, patience, and tenderness. I see them supported in all they are called upon to do and comforted in times of struggle. I pray also for children, young and old, as they remember their fathers. May cherished memories bring smiles and warmth, and may the love remain alive forever in hearts and minds. And for all those on a healing or forgiveness journey, I pray that divine love leads and comforts them on a path toward lasting peace. May the peace and love of God fill their hearts today and every day. The Lord bless you and keep you. Numbers 6:24. On this special weekend, we have not only Father's Day, but it also happens to fall on another holiday, the celebration of Juneteenth, which is June 19th, and today is Father's Day. And as I've been doing my work, thinking about in my life and what I think is missing in my life and what has been missing in maybe lives of others, I've been doing a lot of thinking about the divine masculine and the divine feminine. As far as I know, the Unity churches are the only Christian church that honors both of those aspects of God, the divine feminine and the divine masculine. And we recognize that on Father's Day, when we have started honoring fathers for their role and what that means in terms of the divine masculine. They are the protectors, the teachers, the mentors of the children that they rear, and those in their home that they call their children, their own personal children, or even in their outer work in the community. And one of the things about Juneteenth, and I've done a lot of studying about Juneteenth, and I've done a lot of writing about Juneteenth, and trying to bring out some misconceptions about Juneteenth and what it's all about. The celebration of Juneteenth came from a gathering in a park in Houston, Texas, when the Union General marched to the courthouse and told the governor of the state of Texas, according to the terms of the Emancipation Proclamation, that the slaves were now free. And so this freed Black man who happened to own some property gave that property for a big celebration where people could come out and enjoy their freedom and what that meant. And the most important thing to me about what that day meant and that celebration was that for the first time in their lives, these people who had been slaves were now allowed to go someplace on their own, to assemble, to be with one another, and more importantly, to find relatives and loved ones that had been taken away from them and they didn't even know who they were. And so as that celebration became popular, one of the big aspects of that celebration is family reunions, because this was what freedom meant to those people who were slaves. They could now have their own families. The men could now be the fathers of the families, the teachers, and have that divine masculine role. And unfortunately, we are looking at what has been lost through not having that divine masculine role in the lives of young people, especially young African-American people who are very much involved in the gun violence and the shootings and the things that are happening with urban youth in our city of Charlotte. And one of the things that I love that's happening is that a lot of Black men are stepping up and they are saying, we're going to take on that role of the divine masculine. We're going to march and we're going to bring people together and we're going to be mentors and we're going to talk to the youth about what it means to be a man and to express that divine masculine in our lives. And so I'm encouraged by that. And I'm encouraged for what this day means and the celebration of Father's Day. And congratulations to all you men who are fathers who have fulfilled that role. And to some of you who are taking it a step further and going out into your community and being a part of the 1,000,000-man march or the 1,000-man march, whatever it is, to march and to mentor our youth and to teach them about that quality that they have and that has been misused. Thank you.
And thank you, Brenda Duffy. That was beautiful. Well, I am Reverend Pat Dre, and I am glad that you are here with us on this day in which we are celebrating multiple things. I want to just mention that because the theme of Father's Day is so important to us, it is also reflected in the first principle of unity, which is God is, and God is all there is. So we also remember the love of the Father, that entity, the beloved Father, that gave us life and brings us together, reminding us of the divinity within. The announcements for Unity of Charlotte. Our ministerial candidates, Reverend Jim Ernston and Reverend Lisa Herkoltz, will be here for a Sunday message and a workshop on July 24th. The workshop will be at the Courtyard by Marriott, 11 a.m. following the service. There will be a town hall meeting. Pay attention to this one because it's kind of exciting. On July 10th, it is an important meeting that will be part of our service that day, and it has to do with a new home for Unity of Charlotte. We are in process, and it's very important to have your input and your your reflections on the opportunities that have come our way so far. So please join us on July 10th for that important meeting. All of the links for all of our events that are going on can be found at Unity of Charlotte. Do join with me in an affirmation for our new meeting space and our new minister. Boy, we have a lot going on, don't we? All right. We affirm the presence of a new spiritual leader for Unity of Charlotte who will carry forth our mission-centric vision, energize our leadership and membership, and expand the practice of unity principles in the greater Charlotte area and beyond. We affirm that we have a new home for Unity of Charlotte that fulfills every need for space and use in order to support and share our unified purpose to grow and serve. And so it is. Thank you. It is my pleasure to introduce our speakers this morning. They came to us almost 6 months ago because they decided to make a visit to Unity of Charlotte. And so it is my pleasure to introduce today our Candace Connors, who's a licensed Unity teacher, and Reverend John Connor, a Unity minister, to speak this morning. And the theme will be finding the gold in your wounds. I'm riveted by that one. So first, welcome Candy Connor.
It is wonderful to be here. So I've been struck, as I've heard this morning, and then just over the last week or so, about life in transition and the challenges and rewards of life in transition. And I've just had a song running through my head. And so I'd like to share that song with you. It's one that's been in my head for a long time because I heard it when I was very young, but I just wanted to share it with you. And it goes like this. We are going, heaven knows where we are going. We'll know we're there. We will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there. We know we will. It will be hard, we know, and the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there. We know we will. I love that song because it acknowledges the struggle, but maintains the hope. Thank you. And so the meditation today is about gratitude. And I'd like to start it with a stanza from a poem by Paul Laurence Dunbar called Emancipation. He was born just after the Civil War. His parents were slaves. He wrote during about the turn of the 20th century many poems, and this is one of my favorites. This stanza says, "Look to the heights that are worth your attaining. Keep your feet firm in the path to the good. Toward noble deeds, every effort be straining. Worthy ambition is food for the soul." So with those thoughts in mind, let yourself sit quietly and at ease in the knowledge that despite the struggle, we make progress. We've come far, we continue to move along that path. Let your breathing be natural. Let your heart be easy. We're going to begin the practice of gratitude by feeling how year after year, You have cared for your own life. Now let yourself begin to acknowledge all that has supported you in this care. So I invite you to feel the gratitude with me. With gratitude, I remember the people, the animals, the plants, insects, creatures of the sky and sea, air and water, fire and earth, all whose joyful exertion blesses my life every day. With gratitude, I remember the care and labor of 1,000 generations of elders and ancestors who came before me. I offer my gratitude for the blessings of this earth I have been given. I offer my gratitude for the measure of health I have been given. I offer my gratitude for the family and friends I have been given. I offer my gratitude for the community I have been given. I offer my gratitude for the teachings and lessons I have been given. I offer my gratitude for the life I have been given. Just as we are grateful for our blessings, so we can be grateful for the blessings of others. So I invite you to shift your practice to the cultivation of joy. Continue to breathe gently and bring to mind someone you care about. Perhaps your father, perhaps someone who has been a father figure to you, perhaps a mother who has been a father figure to you as well. Picture that person and feel the natural joy you have for their well-being, their happiness, their success. And with each breath, offer them your grateful, heartfelt wishes. Say to them, may you be joyful. May your happiness increase. May you not be separated from great happiness. May your good fortune and the causes for your joy and happiness increase exponentially. And our practice as members of Unity is to extend those feelings, that hope, to all those we know and love, and to all those we don't know, to resonate joy and hope and gratitude, even to people who are a challenge to us, especially to people who are a challenge to us, that we may be open to our continued learning, because the more we learn, the more we have to be grateful for. And as you continue your breathing, come back now to an awareness of this place, this room, where you are who you are exactly supposed to be, and where you are exactly supposed to be. And thank you very much for sharing this space with me today.
Well, thank you, Candy, for that lovely meditation. I also wanted to acknowledge Father's Day and also Juneteenth and was spoken about in a lovely way. And so I'm going to continue on with our lesson. I have a little, maybe 30-second mini lesson just before we get into the fuller lesson. And as you all know, in Unity, one of the teachings is thoughts held in mind produce after their kind, and that ideas of manifestation as we think about things and hold them in mind and heart and watch them manifest. And this morning I had an experience of sometimes doing the opposite of that kind of works out. Because I don't know if you've ever been driving in your car and kind of hoping for a red light so you can just take a quick look at something that had come up in your phone. And I found that there was a picture on my phone that I wanted to show Candy, and the lights were green to Canada. Like we didn't hit a single red light when I wanted a red light. So that's a little something you can use for yourself when you're running into some red lights. Hope for more red lights, and they're gonna turn green. I don't know where that fits into the Unity philosophy, but thought I'd share it. This morning's topic is the gold in your wounds. And this is a topic I really resonates with me. And so it's about how our wounds and tragedies can be portals to new consciousness and new seeing and new awareness. And so in that little title, there's the gold and there's the wound. And so I thought I'd begin by talking a little bit about the wounds, and we'll move into the gold. So we all have different kinds of wounds, and some similar and some different. There's childhood hurts, wounds from romantic relationships, betrayal, people who thought were our friends who turned out to be untrustworthy, death of a loved one, divorce, loss of a job, rejection, or a sense of failing or failure. These are all things that are wounds for us. And they can result in the feeling of being humiliated, and in some cases in front of others. So in a not so deep wound for me was that the gap between the very first time I tried stand-up comedy and the second time I tried stand-up comedy was 13 years. That's how bad the first time went. I didn't feel so bad about kind of dying on stage in front of strangers, but I had dragged 6 friends with me. And the open mic was on a Monday night. It started at 8. I went on at 1:30 in the morning. These poor people had waited 5.5 hours. And so I had a couple of funny lines. I thought, I'll get up there and I'll kind of wing it. No, don't ever do that. Going up to do a stand-up comedy set. As I said, the thing that I carried with me is all my friends had to see me kind of twisting in the wind and having the experience of being all cringy. I was thinking back about the time that when I was in the 8th grade, it was about this time that teachers started asking you, what do you want to do when you grow up? What do you want to be when you grow up? Because, you know, high school's coming, you're going to be picking classes and that kind of thing. And so they were asking that. And for me, I thought the 2 people I really admired were both ministers. They were both ministers in this kind of fairly small non-denominational movement that I was raised in, my parents were part of since I was 5 years old. That movement was called the Emissaries of Divine Light. It still exists, but it's much smaller than even it was then. And so I thought, well, that's what I'd like to do. And the Emissaries was what you might classify as sort of New Age Christian mysticism. And so when you would go and take the classes and when you would finish, the class length was about what it would be to become a licensed Unity teacher in Unity. They were, it was all done at once, whereas Unity classes are spread out. You might go, you'd go like for 4 months of seminary training. And at the end of it, since the idea was that you were going to be serving God by serving people, you didn't get a title of reverend or minister. You were called a server. And my parents were servers. And because the movement was so small, almost very, very few people were like full-time ministers. Most people were kind of volunteer ministers. They had house churches, which is what I grew up in, a house church. And so people would come over on Sunday morning, and but then my parents both worked out in regular jobs. But the retreat centers were lovely, where I took some of my classes and where I lived for a period of time when I was 20, was this 350 acre spiritual community in Loveland, Colorado, where at that time about 150 people were living and working together and seeking to demonstrate principle in their daily lives, all the while growing, organic food. And so it in many ways it was pretty idyllic. So after I completed my training, I didn't go out to seek a church or a place to serve as a minister. This was about when I was about 22. Because of some of these things, like I said, that there's not many people who do it full time. But as time went on, I started to feel less and less worthy to serve as a minister. I kind of have these perfectionistic ideals about how good I should be as a person to sort of be worthy to do that kind of work. So in the meantime, I got married in 1988, and within a year or so, we decided to have a family. And after about a year of nothing happening, we decided to look into infertility treatments. So we spent several years doing that, with starting off with hormone therapy and then moving into in vitro fertilizations and on to zygote interfallopian transfers and all these sort of complicated scientific techniques. And finally, we got pregnant, as it were, in 1994. And so it was the culmination of a dream for us, and everything was going well until about 5.5 months into the pregnancy. And then some problems started to happen, some bleeding. And so my then wife, Bonnie, had to go into the hospital. And so the doctor's report was kind of grim, but she had a little hope. The doctor said that, well, maybe if she were to just kind of become, sort of bedbound for the next 3 months and just try to have the pregnancy, kind of maybe some surgery, have it go on to maybe 36 weeks, that maybe things could work out. But as it happened, things didn't work out that way. There was what was called an abruption of the placenta, which means that the baby is going to be born and there's nothing to stop it. And so she was too small to live outside of her mom. So our daughter, Sarah, lived for 2.5 hours, and then she died. And that was not something that we had even considered as a possibility. And so we were sort of thrown into, and I'll just kind of talk about myself and my own experience, that sort of thrown into sort of meaninglessness, that nothing seemed to have meaning or purpose anymore. And we were wondering what's to do next. So one of the things that we decided to do after a couple of months is, okay, all meaning seems to have left us, all purpose. I wanted to just hit the road, like just get in the car and drive. And so I did want to get away from our business. I did want to get away, for us to get away from our home, but I also wanted to go to something. I wanted to go toward hope and toward whatever was next. And so what we decided to do was to just take a road trip, drive around, and try to, for one thing, go and meet up with spiritual mentors and spiritual teachers and ministers that we've known, to sort of say, what is your purpose? Because I used to feel strong sense of purpose, but when Sarah died, sort of everything became up for review. Everything became questionable. And so we did that, and we drove around the West for several weeks, and we went to Sunrise Ranch in Colorado and other places in Arizona, Native American retreats, and we went to New Mexico, and so once again, I decided that I'm not just going to ask, spiritual experts. I'll just ask anybody that I feel enough connection to have a conversation with. What is the meaning of your life? What is the purpose of your life? And so I was in a Subway restaurant, and the teenage girl behind the counter, after I got my sandwich, I asked her the question, what is the purpose of your life? And she said, well, I don't know. But it's like, well, that's an honest answer. And so, but after I went out into the car and I was looking back through the window, she was wiping down the counter, but I could tell she was deep in thought, like she was considering the question. And so it felt like it was a blessing just to her to even ask the question so she could start considering it. After we walked out in the car, as I said, that she was deep in thought. So it was actually a blessing. And we found out that when we asked various people, person behind the counter at the hotel, or people that had been teachers of ours for decades, nobody had a particularly extraordinarily new or profound answer. But I was pleasantly surprised that most people had something to say about the fact that their purpose was to be helpful to others. Their purpose had something to do with being of service and being a blessing to other people. And that related to a sense of purpose that I'd had too. So finally, we get to the headquarters of my church, that place in Loveland, Colorado, that spiritual community. And where I met with and asked several people that question. And then one of the people, a fellow named Cliff Penwell, he said, well, John, what I'd like to do is I'd like to tell you what I think your purpose is. And I said, okay, well, I'm open to that. And so we arranged to get together for lunch. And so during that meal, he started to say a whole litany of nice things about me. And I'm very adept at deflecting that stuff. So I was just batting those kind of things away one after the other. And so I'm sitting here and he's saying these nice things at me. He's sending me these blessings. And to me, it was like I was in the Matrix, because here they come and I'm like, I'm going to dodge that one. And here comes another one. I'm going to get out of the way. I'm batting them down. And there's my glasses. And so as I'm doing this, because aren't many of us adept at that we'll bat away the compliment, we'll bat away the acknowledgement of us in some way, because it doesn't agree with the tape that runs in our mind. That's this narrative of our unworthiness. Speaking of Father's Day, I can remember somebody telling me, oh, you're such a good father. And what I thought of at that moment was a time when I'd yelled at my daughter. And so this is a big part of the lesson right here, is to sort of let those guards down, stop dodging the blessings that are coming to us, stop dodging the words of affirmation and goodness that come your way because you are worthy of it. The tape that's playing is the unworthy thing to listen to. Unfortunately, we tend to have so much faith in that negativity, that tape that plays. And so part of our shift is to be open to the blessing and to, you might say, become more and more closed to the internal negative narrative that's playing out in our heads. So after me deflecting these words a few times, Cliff said, "No, John, listen to me." He said, "You are a priest." And he did not mean that, of course, in the Catholic sense, but in the sense of a shamanic spiritual guide or teacher. And so when he said that, that sort of leapt over all of my defenses and all of my internal arguments of unworthiness, and it landed. And it landed in a way that I ended up in not being able to speak for a minute and ended up being in tears because, Cliff is a very wise teacher himself, and he didn't know me all that well. So it's like for him to see it and for him to verbalize it was very powerful for me at that time. So I couldn't deny it anymore. He had said it right on the nose, and I couldn't pretend I wasn't good enough. All these feelings about not being good enough, not feeling pure enough, not feeling like I've grown enough, they were still present, but not as strong, not as powerful. I began to think, here I am, imperfect, but there's something I can do with my imperfect self. And that's what I started to see. So when I got back home, I gave a sermon of my own thoughts, something I hadn't done since I was about 20. It was the custom in the Emissaries of Divine Light, is but because they were all house churches and people were working full time, is that the kind of the main minister of the whole movement would give a sermon on a Sunday. It would be transcribed and sent out, and people in the house churches would just read that sermon. But this is the first time I gave just a sermon of my own. I was ready to stand up in front of a group of people and say, here's my perspective. And it was a golden part that was subsequent to that experience. And I like to say that it was a golden part that was sort of subsequent to Sarah coming into our life and passing. Not that they were connected in some sort of divinely deliberate way. Because I don't believe that the divine sends calamities to us to give us life lessons. I don't think that God thinks, well, this guy needs to learn some life lessons, so I'll kill his daughter. Let's see what he makes of that. I don't believe that is the way that the divine works. But life on earth, to quote Shakespeare, contains some slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. It contains wounds. And sometimes we can see something new subsequent to the painful events if we look at them a little bit differently. There can be gold in your wounds. And some of that gold for me has to do with increased compassion. Although I think I was a fairly compassionate person before Sarah, I remember that I wanted to avoid things like being around somebody who was very ill, perhaps even dying, because it made me uncomfortable. I wasn't trying to be mean, but it just made me queasy, and I didn't know what to do and how to be around suffering. But a few months after we returned from our trip, I went to a visit to a friend who was in the hospital, and she had had a mastectomy and was really having a tough time. But she was a trooper. Even though she was being sick into her little pan when I arrived in the room, she looked up and said, "Oh, there's no chair for John. Somebody get a chair for John." Just being gracious, even in the middle of her own suffering. Now, it used to be that I would have wanted to be in that hospital room the shortest period of time possible and sort of then get out. But with this change and with this increased compassion, all I wanted to do was to be there and hold her hand and be of any use to her that I might be. One of the things she asked for was for more morphine. She had had another friend there and we were both with her. And I went to the nurse and asked for the morphine. And when she came and Pat had fallen asleep, then I drove on back to Austin. And she was having such a tough time. And in 6 months, she was going to have another mastectomy. And she was elderly and it seemed like it was just so much. I wondered to myself how I would handle going through that process. And before the end, you might say. I found out a day or two later that she had passed away peacefully that night. And I was sad to lose my friend, but I was glad that any of the suffering was over. Something else that was a golden experience subsequent to Sarah's passing was around it was about early 1995 by this point. There's a quote that went all around the world on the internet that originally was credited to Nelson Mandela, but actually it was a Marianne Williamson quote. And it was from her book, A Return to Love. And it was, I don't know who was responsible for it, but I think it was a blessing that it was miscredited because Mr. Mandela is so widely respected that everybody read it. But here's the quote, and you've heard this before. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small doesn't serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about you shrinking so that others won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. As we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Good job, Marianne. I was thinking about going through the wounds. We move through our wounds and we see what's on the other side. We have all been wounded. And I think that there's a blessing we can give each other if we could start to see each other as we truly are, in the context that Marianne spoke about. Even though that can be difficult to see about ourselves, many of us can easily see the beauty in others and in our friends, but it is often not so easy to see that about ourselves. I have a theory that it takes at least 4 positive statements to permeate the Kevlar body armor that many of us carry around our hearts. Of course, there's no mathematical certainty that 4 is the right number. And it's more than a one-time job. I did spend some time after that second time doing stand-up comedy. I did spend a few years doing stand-up shows. And after I would do that, the first 2 or 3 times somebody came up after the show and said, "Oh, that was really funny," I'd think, well, maybe. But then when a couple more came up, it's like, well, it's hard to deny. I'll accept that. And the same is true of friendship. Many times we speak of a good friend, as someone who is willing to love us despite our faults, who is willing to be able to see our pettiness, maybe sometimes our immaturity, and still love us. And that is a good definition. But I'd like to add something to the definition of a good friend. And perhaps this kind of a friend is even more rare. Is someone who will let us shine. A friend who will let you be great, who will let you step out and be yourself. They will let something wonderful come out of you without feeling threatened by it, and won't try to take you down a notch or two. Rather, this friend will delight in your blooming. It's good to know that something that is not included in Marianne's quote is anything about, quote, humility. Occasionally somebody says that somebody needs a good dose of humility. And it can be a popular religious notion that we need to be humble before God or humble before leaders. Well, for many of us, perhaps through childhood experiences and work experiences, we got humility pretty much down. We've been humbled plenty in our life. What would be helpful is to have a good dose of confidence, a good dose of blessing. When I speak of confidence, many people think that they have to somehow reach down and inside themselves and pull out this assurance and fabulousness. And that is ultimately what's to be done. But for many of us, that's step two. Step one is to hear from a reasonable outside voice, a reasonable voice outside ourselves, some of these true things that Marianne talked about. There's so much negative self-talk that goes on in our own brains that a reasonable voice outside ourselves can be a real blessing. And so we're going to do that right now. So we're going to do a quick exercise, and we're going to I'm going to have you go down the rows and say A, and count off A, B, A, B, A, B, and then we're going to pair up for a quick exercise. So we'll start with you, A, Pat, and AB, AB, and AB, okay? And so if you could stand up. And how this is going to work is with the partner that you're paired with, I'm going to give you some words to say, and your job is going to be to say them. We're going to start with A. The people, yeah, go ahead. The people who are A are going to be the people who speak first. The people who are B will speak second. So the person speaking, I'm going to give you the words, and then you're just going to say them to them. And the person who is B, your job is to receive it. Just let it come in. Just be open and receive those words as the truth of you. And then after that, you'll switch, okay? And so now, as you can just gently look into each other's eyes. It doesn't have to be a hard stare, but you can do that. And now A's, please repeat after me. I'm going to say, I'll say a sentence and then I'll say another. Okay, so please say, I can see you have been wounded. I have been too. Those who hurt you were unconscious. They didn't really see you. I see you. I see your beauty and your greatness. I hope you see what I see. And just be in that for a moment. And now, person, the B role, you will speak and the A's will listen. And once again, A's seek to really receive this as the truth of you. I can see you have been wounded. I have been too. Those who hurt you were unconscious. They didn't really see you. I see you. I see your beauty and your greatness. I hope you see what I see. Just be with that for a moment. Thank you. Now you all can be seated. And hugs are welcome. That was the truth of you.
Asked him, how then do we pray? That he pointed out that it was the Pharisees and the Sadducees.
That is
who
the truth
were
of you.
big
Allow yourself to
spiritual
accept
leaders of that.
that when the tape comes up to talk about unworthiness, allow yourself to remember this moment when you heard the truth from your sister or your brother. Let it be so in you. This week, let out your gold. And I pray all these things in the Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Candy and Reverend John. That was beautiful. I want to thank Candy for the music you send out through who you are and through your meditation. And to Reverend John, thank you for your authenticity and this profound message and a profound experience. I deeply appreciate you both. It's now time for our offertory. And I want to mention that this is a beautiful time during our service where we get to look into our hearts and see how we live circulation, the circulation of all of our good. We are deeply grateful to all of you for supporting each other, Unity of Charlotte, and the importance of the unity principles. And your financial support is also deeply appreciated. So you can give here during this offertory. You can go online and you can use the magic of your cell phone to be able to support Unity of Charlotte. And I do know that the experience that I saw people having around the room, that they're filled with gratitude. And we're grateful for that. Join with me in our prosperity blessing. Joyously, I give this gift, knowing the divine presence as this multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, God. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. And join in a circle for our peace song. The gentleman, the tall gentleman in the back here.
Douglas Wilson, former president.
Yes, I only know him with his mask on.